Thank you for having me back.
Do you expect that this new law will take effect? Do you expect that it's likely to be stopped by the courts?
Well, it certainly is unconstitutional according to current law, which says that states may only ban abortion or with the health exception after the point of viability, which is after the what the legislature is saying is the point at which the fetus can feel pain.
Several pro-choice groups have focused in specifically on this fetal pain rationale and said that they think that codifying that into law is essentially designed as a challenge to Roe versus Wade, that this is legislation that's designed to get Roe v. Wade before the Supreme Court again because they think that it would be overturned by the conservative majority there. Do you think that's the case? Do you think that's what's going on?
Well, I definitely think this is a direct challenge to Roe v. Wade. I think it's important, Rachel, to point out that the scientific evidence does not support that the fetus can feel pain until well into the third trimester. I was very disappointed this morning to read the New York Times suggest that there is sort of contested science around whether or not the fetus can feel pain at the point at which the Nebraska legislature is asserting that it can, when the published scientific literature does not support that.
The other law that Governor Fineman signed into law yesterday and did it at the same signing ceremony mandates that doctors sort of extensively mentally screen women who come for abortion services. I have to admit, I don't understand it. As far as I read it, I feel like their allegation here is that women have abortions because they're crazy. Is that the implication that they're making here?
Well, I think there's two things. Like the fetal pain bill, this is an extensive misuse of science. This bill says that doctors need to inform women of any characteristic that may be a demographic characteristic, that may be a social characteristic, that may be a health condition, that may be a mental health condition that has been shown to be associated with a problem after abortion. It's a long list of things. People don't know what it means, but it's clearly meant to say to women, if you have any kind of health condition, you need to know that you might suffer poorly after an abortion, something that, again, science doesn't support.
Professor Tracy Weitz, director at the Bixby Center for Global Reproductive Health and an associate professor at UCSF, University of California, San Francisco. Thanks very much for joining us tonight. I have a feeling this is not going to be our last discussion of this Nebraska bill. Thank you.
I hope we can keep talking about it.
Thanks. Big news from the war in Afghanistan today about an isolated region in the eastern part of the country. On the map, it's known as the Korengal Valley. It's frequently described in the news as the Valley of Death. In many months of reporting there, NBC's Richard Engel witnessed ferocious combat in that region firsthand.
It's just after 8 p.m. when suddenly, incoming.
Boy! Get your saws up here! Boy!
But the soldiers can't tell where the Taliban are hiding.
Hey, who is that?
There's no high-tech way to find the militants. American military superiority doesn't mean much in these mountains.
That's from Richard Engel's award-winning documentary Tip of the Spear, which was filmed in the Korengal Valley. Today, the U.S. pulled its last troops out of the Korengal Valley, taking everything they could with them, including 500,000 pounds of satellite equipment, lots of unused ammunition, and then they destroyed much of the rest of what they had brought in with them. Richard Engel was back in the Korengal again this week.
Just moments ago, there was a building here full of munitions. Now, there's just a field of debris, some of it still smoldering and hot. The U.S. military is blowing up this outpost piece by piece. The soldiers don't want to leave anything useful behind for the Taliban.
In essence, the U.S. military has written the Korengal Valley off, at least for now, saying it may never be a place with government as we understand it. One veteran of the fighting there telling the New York Times today, quote, "It is frustrating because we bled there and now we're leaving." So you question, were those sacrifices worth it? But just because you lost guys in a place doesn't mean you need to stay there. In a half-decade of fighting in the Korengal Valley, 42 American troops lost their lives there. Now that geographic part of this long, long war appears to be over. Former Arkansas governor, minister, and Republican presidential candidate Mike Huckabee spoke last week to the Student Government Association at the College of New Jersey, for which he was reportedly paid $25,000. Woohoo! While he was there, Mr. Huckabee also gave an interview to student reporter Michael Tracy, who writes for the campus alternative news magazine, The Perspective. Now, in this interview, Mr. Huckabee talked about Republican politics, his feelings about Michael Steele. He talked about his opposition to repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell. He talked about his opposition to same-sex marriage. When he was discussing same-sex marriage with this reporter, Mr. Huckabee explained his views this way.
You don't go ahead and accommodate every behavioral pattern that is against the ideal. I mean, that would be like saying, well, there are a lot of people who like to use drugs, so let's go ahead and accommodate those who want to use drugs. There are some people who believe in incest, so we should accommodate them. There are people who believe in polygamy, should accommodate them.
You know, being gay, just like being on drugs or doing incest or having lots of husbands. Reporter Michael Tracy then asked about Mr. Huckabee's position on same-sex couples adopting children.
Arkansas passed a ban on gay adoptions in 2008, I believe. What was your take on that?
Children are not puppies. This is not a time to see if we can experiment and find out how does this work.
After these comments to the student publication became national news for obvious reasons, Mr. Huckabee struck back by attacking the reporter, Michael Tracy. In a statement posted on his Political Action Committee's website, Mr. Huckabee got really classy and said, quote, "The young college student hopefully will find a career other than journalism. I would ask that he release the unedited tape of our conversation. He attempted to sensationalize my well-known and hardly unusual views of same-sex marriage." The incest thing? The young journalism student chose to focus on the issue of same-sex marriage and grossly distort my views. So instead of addressing the substance of his puppy's defense or the state accommodating incest thing, Mike Huckabee blamed the college reporter, which was apparently the wrong thing to do, since Mr. Tracy did not crumple into a corner in the student center. Instead, he did post the unedited tapes online, along with this blistering response. Quote, "It is telling that nowhere in his statement did Huckabee suggest he was misquoted in the article, and rightfully so. We have the audio and transcripts to prove that everything reported is accurate. His words speak for themselves, and it is a shame that he is now so quickly embarrassed of them."
There are some people who believe in incest, so we should accommodate them. There are people who believe in polygamy, should accommodate them.
How dare you publish what I say? If you are keeping score at home, it is students at the College of New Jersey, 1. Presidential candidate Mike Puppies Huckabee, 0. So far, he has 0.
If there's one thing the right wing hates, it's President Obama's logos. Back in February, we reported about the kerfuffle over the new U.S. Missile Defense Agency logo.
Here's a look at it. Some people think that the circular red, white, and blue design looks a lot like President Obama's campaign logo. Others are critical of the crescent and star look, claiming that it's a similar symbol to Islam.
Ooh, suspicious graphics. That firestorm died when everyone figured out it was a Bush administration design. But still, that same crypto crescent phobia is now hounding the logo for the Nuclear Security Summit.
Why? Because apparently you see that crescent in those 4 flags there. Muslim countries, Turkey, Algeria, Tunisia, and Pakistan.
Connect the dots, people. Obama, crescent, Muslim, nuclear. Why aren't you more afraid? New York Post columnist Michael Goodwin goes even deeper, saying, quote, "No, I am not suggesting President Obama is a secret Muslim, but I am certain the crescent-like design of the logo is not a coincidence, especially at an event where Iran's nuclear ambition and al-Qaeda's search for a bomb are prime topics." Of course, liberals might tell you the logo is just a stylized version of a hydrogen atom. Sure it is. But when you take a really close look, Obama's Islamic crescent nuke terrorist icon also looks like this, and even this. Coincidence? Wake up, America.
The Piggly Wiggly, I knew it! Thank you, Ken. Appreciate that.